everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, for the last couple of episodes, we've really focused on, fresh starts, getting fit and healthy, all kinds of things that we tend toward during a new year period of time. And this week, we are going to stick with that mindset, and we're looking at a selection of documentaries and films that are all about encouraging the desire to try something new. At the beginning of the year, we all seem to have a little bit more of an adventurous spirit. And as the year goes on, we tend to gravitate towards the familiar or the routine. So hopefully, these particular films will inspire you to explore a new point of interest, or perhaps a hobby that you've wanted to try out for ages but just haven't been able to. Maybe it's a lack of opportunity or time or whatever, but I'm hoping these films will really spur you to go out, grab on to something new. These picks explore topics that are all over the place. I've got topics like yoga, I've got tabletop gaming, I've even got this thing called mermaiding in there. So, it's such a wide breadth of interests and topics that hopefully something will catch your interest. And if nothing else, these are all really phenomenal documentaries about incredible themes, but also really interesting, incredible people. So, definitely check them out. As always, all of these picks are available entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card, and they're all going to be on one of our 3 video services, which are CleveNet's Overdrive, Hoopla Digital, and Canopy. So without any further ado, let's get to the Recs. Okay, we're going to kick things off with a selection from CleveNet's Overdrive, and that is the documentary Yoga is a Transformational Journey. And this film was made in 2012. The film title is a little bit foofy and kind of nebulous, but I do think that this documentary is really, really interesting and a really great point of reference for people who are maybe not super familiar with yoga already, who are a little bit skeptical about whether or not yoga could be for them. This documentary is told from the point of view of a woman named Suzanne. She tells her story, and it's quite a compelling one. She was very driven, focused, ambitious woman whose life kind of fell apart when her mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer at quite an early age. I believe the mother was in her 50s. And Suzanne made the decision to sort of drop everything, move back home to California to spend what little time she had with her mother, and proceeded to have a really difficult grieving period, at which point she turned to yoga, and yoga was really able to help her rebalance her life and the feelings that she was going through at the time. So that's all told to you in the first couple of minutes of the film. So you have a point of reference for where she is and how she was feeling when yoga essentially, I don't know if you want to say brought her inner peace or whatever, but when she found yoga. And that's what yoga is to her, this realigning of herself. And what I found fascinating about this film is that we get this point of reference from our essentially guide into what yoga is. But then she also interviews all of these massive names within the yoga community. You've got big time yoga teachers, people who have founded different branches of yoga. You've also got some celebrity practitioners in there. I believe Christy Turlington is a huge devotee of yoga, also talks about it. But they all have very specific feelings about what yoga is to them and what it can be for others. But at the same time, there's this unifying theme of yoga makes you your best self. It connects you to who you are and who you've been from the beginning. But it also connects you to this universal existence as well. And I think that's really beautiful, especially in a time where so many of us are feeling very disconnected from everything, including other people. But just I did find that really quite lovely and inspirational. And this is coming from someone who has done yoga in the past, but has never been like a devotee. Like, It's never been my thing. But watching this made me actually want to roll out my mat again and see if maybe I'm missing this thing that they're talking about. And I think that's one of the great things about documentaries like this is that, even if it doesn't, make me someone who's like hardcore into yoga in the end, it has like inspired me to give it another shot, see if maybe I'm someone who fits this particular interest more now than I was, say, 5 years ago. Anyway, uh, those interviews are fascinating because you have people who are really invested in this lifestyle that goes with yoga as well. And you have people who are not invested in the lifestyle and are simply like, this is a channel to who you are. And it's fascinating to hear these very, very different points of view that again still have this unifying yoga is about you and yourself, and it really, I think, will fascinate people who are just on the fringes and maybe just starting to kind of poke around in the whole yoga world. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, or if you've been curious about yoga and you'd like to hear other people talk about why you should be interested in it, check out Yoga is a Transformational Journey. It's a really beautifully filmed documentary. You definitely get that sort of mysticism kind of feel when you're watching it. But the interviews themselves are really, really interesting. I really loved that aspect of it and hearing from so many different people. And she interviews a ton of yoga experts. So again, Yoga is a Transformational Journey, available on Overdrive. Now, if you're someone who is interested in yoga but maybe wants like something specific and instructional, also check out on Overdrive Rodney Yee's Complete Yoga for Beginners. It has actually his full course for someone who's just starting out with yoga, and I think he's very easy to follow. I know he's a controversial figure within the yoga community, but he's still a solid instructor. His steps are not his steps are definitely beginner steps that he puts in this, so it's not going to be, movements or positions that you're going to just be like, nope, can't do this, I'm done. Because I hate when beginner videos of any kind are like that. The more I feel like this is something I can never do, the more I'm likely to never go back to that interest again. So again, if you're looking for a really solid, easy to follow beginners yoga video, check out Rodney Yee's Complete Yoga for Beginners. As always, I'm going to link to his little playlist, and that's available on Overdrive as well. Okay, so maybe the whole yoga, inner peace, health, and wellness movement isn't for you. Totally fine. Maybe you are someone who's much more interested in tabletop gaming, tabletop RPGs, board games, card games, things like that. If you are, I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend the documentary Gamemaster, which is available on both Hoopla and on Canopy. This is a fantastic sort of entree point into tabletop games. It really, really is. What Gamemaster does so well is it's both interesting for people who are already into gaming, because it follows the lives of these different game designers. It follows their whole process of how they got the game that they put out into production. It follows how they even got interested in gaming. And it also introduces, of course, a ton of different tabletop games, all of which are focused on different kinds of interest, because that's the wonderful world of board games. I personally am a huge fan of anthropomorphic woodland creature games. I know that sounds really niche, and it definitely is, but there's a huge faction of people out there who also like furry woodland creature games. There are other people who are really interested in sort of travel games that bring you to different cities or different worlds. There are people who are specific fans of a type of gameplay. Then there are your more casual fans who just really, really love party games. And this is a phenomenal entree for people who are like that, who maybe have only explored one type of game or aren't familiar with games very much at all, other than the ones that you see in the department stores like Walmart or Meijer or wherever. And it's one of those documentaries that's just so engaging. Like, I love the segments on each of the different designers. It's not like one of them is more interesting than the other. They all have really fascinating points of view, and all of their games are kind of games that I would be interested in trying out. It's really, really interesting to me that games that are normally in genres that I have very little to no interest could suddenly be appealing just by hearing the backstories to what made them put these games out. You really get this sort of fleshed out viewpoint from the creators, and I loved seeing that evolution. How someone would just be sketching an idea in a notepad, and then they make an art cell of it, and then it becomes a little figure, and then it becomes a full-on board game. And seeing the different processes as someone who is also like artistic and likes to design things, seeing someone else's process is always really fascinating and really enlightening. And seeing how different everybody's was. Like, nobody came at these projects from the exact same point of view, which is, partly the sign of a good documentary, that they were able to pick such different people, but also just, I think, a really vivid viewpoint of the gaming industry in and of itself. So seeing those little behind the scenes glimpses, really, really fascinating. Also learning exactly how Kickstarter works, that's really, really interesting too. As someone who's definitely backed many, many projects on Kickstarter, it does a good job of explaining, here's what happens, here's where all of the different division of the funding ends up going, how it is actually a Kickstarter for a business in a lot of ways, and how that's not the case for many businesses. Some Kickstarters that we hear about are huge, huge successes, but we don't hear about the thousands that are probably unsuccessful. So that was a really interesting and enlightening little tidbit that I got from this documentary as well. So if you are interested in tabletop gaming, period, if you are intrigued by it but maybe haven't had the chance to explore much, if you are someone who's interested in the process of production of games, or if you're just interested in how things like Kickstarter, GoFundMe work, check out Gamemaster from 2020. It is a phenomenal documentary, highly entertaining. That's the other thing. I absolutely love the way that this is put together. It's just very engaging. If you're looking for that kind of engaging documentary, Gamemaster is definitely for you. Check it out. You won't regret it. Okay, this next recommendation is for all the foodies out there, and it is for a film on Hoopla Digital, and that film is called Ramen Heads from 2017. Now, I don't care if you are someone who is drawn to a particular region's food, if you like a specific food that you are devoted to trying, if you are just sort of delving into the whole foodie world thing anyway, you have to watch Ramen Heads. I love, love, love this documentary. It is the perfect example of a group of people whose fervent love for one dish borders on obsession, but is also super beautiful in the way that it drives them. Ramen Heads follows this king of ramen in Japan, whose name is Osamu Tomita. He is the go-to guy if you are interested in ramen. He is both a follower of the dish, a devotee of the dish, and also a ramen chef. He has his own little place, and he's super well respected. And this film follows essentially his obsession with this dish. He's always thinking about, the best ingredients, how to meld different flavors together for his own purposes, like as far as his own business goes, but then he also loves exploring everybody else's, the competition, so to speak. But, part of it is, yes, I want to make sure my food is better than theirs. But a part of it is also the desire just to see what other people are creating, to see what other people are able to develop that maybe he hasn't thought of yet. And along that journey, he meets other people who are just as obsessed and just as enamored with this dish as he is. And it's just sort of this fantastic noodle thread connecting everybody in the film. So he's trying different dishes. He is talking about his own experiences throughout, but we're also hearing from other people why they might put in a specific ingredient. And it is very Japanese, in that the sort of devotion to this one craft and the perfection of this one craft is so fervently spoken of. But it really, really is fantastic. And I think that, again, it doesn't matter if you're not a fan of East Asian cuisine, you will be able to latch onto that concept of passion for a food because, maybe you feel that way about barbecue or burgers or Greek food or French food or, you know, traditional indigenous peoples dishes. Like, that's a huge movement right now. So, you take the passion that you see on screen and you funnel it towards your own. And I think the approach to the making of this noodle soup dish is something that can also inspire you, either to cook your own dishes or to go out and find dishes that you do love with as much devotion as the people in this documentary. Very, very beautifully shot. I mean, it is a really beautiful film, but it's also just fascinating, again, to hear the people who are interviewed and spoken and who speak about this one particular dish. So definitely recommended for foodies. Recommended if you are interested in parts of East Asia, because you do get to see quite a bit of the area that they travel through. It really is great for people who are looking to find that sort of passion, precision, dedication to a thing. So again, Ramen Heads, available on Hoopla and I believe on Canopy. Excellent, excellent documentary. Absolute must watch. Okay, moving right along to my next pick. This one is from Canopy and is for a documentary from 2012 called Mermaids. Now, I did not know prior to this week that mermaiding was a thing. It is absolutely fascinating and I think quite beautiful in concept. So, mermaiding is the hobby where people will go to some location, whether it be a swimming pool, an aquarium, a beach, and they will don actual, like, flippered tails and become mermaids. And I honestly, I've never heard of that. I've seen people put on essentially mermaid costumes for, film shoots, like with models or, for movies, but I didn't know that that was a hobby. Like that was something that people just would get together to do. And what I loved about this documentary is that it followed the lives of a handful of people who do this for a hobby, and explaining why this was a thing. Of course, mermaids are this mythical group of beings that have been around for centuries at this point. We've had stories about them for an incredibly long amount of time, but that sort of transformative power is really alluring to a lot of people. So many people that talked through this film are so enamored with the concept of the beauty and transformation in that pull, and it really, really does move you in certain spots where that connection to that idea is so visceral on screen. And that's one of the things that really grabs me about documentaries a lot of times. when it makes me feel as much as a fictional film. And hearing the individual tales, each of their stories is fleshed out in such a way that makes you like them, makes you relate to these people, even if they're coming from experiences that you have absolutely no familiarity with. And it's just, there's a universality about that longing, that sort of, that all of them talk about. And that's the thing, like there's just this, no matter how they're coming at this particular hobby, there's a unifying point. And it's just miraculous to hear when when they're all telling their stories in separate places at different times. And it's just wonderful. I loved this documentary. I really, really did. Beautiful, beautiful stories. And like, the peripheral people you meet are also, I loved some of the peripherals that we met as much as these primary figures. I also just was interested in like how the whole process worked, because it sounds like, I mean, mermaiding is not an easy hobby. It's not like, I jog, I put on some sneakers, I run out the door. Like, the whole mermaiding thing, you've got to bring this huge tail. And we actually, one of my favorite moments in this film is seeing this one mermaider strap this huge tail onto her back and ride off on her motorcycle. And I'm just like, that seems like there'd be so much wind drag, and you've got to be devoted to something to do that. But it amused me and really like showed me how much she loved doing this particular thing. So yeah, I think if you're someone especially who has maybe hesitated to try a hobby, watch this documentary. It doesn't matter if that hobby has nothing to do with mermaids, water, swimming. That's not the point. The passion that these people feel, and the joy and release and relief that they get when they have this particular hobby, I think will speak to people who've wanted to try something new and maybe haven't, and hopefully inspire them to go out and do it. No matter what, like, it's worth trying, because if it gives you that kind of peace, if it gives you that sense of self, you should do it. So again, check out Mermaids on Canopy. Wonderful documentary, incredibly inspirational. Okay, moving on to my final recommendation for this week. It is also available on Canopy, and is for the documentary The Kids Table. Now, The Kids Table is fantastic. I loved this film so, so much. It follows this group of 4 young adults who are all very familiar with one another and very competitive, and they are exploring the quickly disappearing world of competitive bridge for whatever reasons. And, it is as much about the friendship between these 4 as it is the actual game. And that's one of those things that I think will speak to a lot of people. I was caught immediately because when I was probably their age, I, for whatever reason, ended up with a group of friends who were absolutely obsessed with bridge. I have no idea why. I had never played bridge before. I was in college, and then all of a sudden it's what we were doing, like whenever we had free time to play. And watching this just brought back all of those memories. But you don't even have to have any connection to bridge. If you've ever had a group of friends who are like weirdly competitive and obsessive about something, this will remind you of them, because that like weird camaraderie along with like sometimes aggression, along with sometimes like just all out happiness, like that's the feeling that sort of spills over into the entirety of this movie. It's also just fascinating to hear people talk about bridge and why they like it. I mean, it is a card game that probably at this point a lot of people who are watching this have never played before, because it really is kind of a dying breed. I know when I was a child, my grandparents and parents all played like euchre and pinochle, and they had regular groups, and that was just a thing people did. And today, like I mean, I'm my parents' age, and I don't have like a bridge club. I don't have like a crew of friends who play cards all the time. And I don't have people that I know who do either. It really is this sort of dying art, hobby, whatever you want to call it. And sort of hearing about what makes bridge beautiful or so appealing kind of made me want to play again. Uh, but the thing is, you have to, bridge is all about communication with your team. And so, what I like about this documentary is it sort of like urges you to go out and to people, which is not something that I have been interested in since long before pandemic times. Like, I've not been a joiner in ages. So this documentary is one of those that can definitely light a fire under you to want to meet people, to want to try things, to want to go back to old things that you remember. So if you're looking for that kind of inspiration, if you're looking for just this jolt to get you going, check this out. Or, say you're just at a time of life when you're feeling particularly nostalgic. If you ever were one of those people who was in a group of very tightly knit friends, this one is also 100% worth it to check out, because it will absolutely remind you of them. Like, that's just one of the things that made this one special for me. It really did. And I totally texted my friends, some of whom I hadn't talked to in ages. Oh, I just watched this movie about bridge. You have to watch it. It's great. It that's what I loved about this. It spurred me into action, and I'm hoping that it will spur you into action as well. So again, available on Canopy, the kids table. Whether you miss your friends, whether you're interested in trying bridge, whether you're interested in the whole concept of a dying hobby, check it out. It's amazing. Okay, so those are all my recommendations for this week. If you have a rec for a documentary about hobbies, of points of interest, if you have a specific hobby that you think we should be trying out as well, please, please, please comment with those below. I love hearing about other people's recommendations. I'm always on the lookout for them. If you happen to have a recommendation for a future topic that you'd like to see us cover, please comment with that below as well. As always, thank you for staying with us, for watching, for being such a great audience. I really, really love hearing from you, and I really love being able to put these together. So thank you for that. And with that, I am going to close out this episode. Thank you for viewing, and I will see you next time. Bye!